What were/are some of the devil's most outstanding attributes? That's an important question. Since our greatest obstacle on this path will be Satan, it stands to reason that we must recognize his character and know his presence. So we need to be able to have an understanding of this idea of Satan, which goes beyond a red man in a suit with a pitchfork poking people. What exactly is the obstacle that's on our path? What is the force or the entity which humanity has to contend with as we strive in this quest for Yah to reach higher levels of development? The story in Genesis chapter 3 gives us insight into that psychological obstacle, right? That psychological presence. And we see it, one second. We see it when we look at Genesis chapter 3, verses 4 through 6. When the serpent speaks unto the woman, you shall not surely die. For Yah does know that in the day that you eat thereof, your eyes will be opened, and you will be as God, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat. She gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. So we see here from this story that the serpent was a master of making that which was wrong appear to be right, and that which was right appear to be wrong. He came in Genesis chapter 3 boasting about the benefits of violating Yah's commandments. He boasted about the benefits of doing what's wrong. He was like a salesperson pitching you on the value of spiritual disobedience, while simultaneously hyping up himself and downplaying the importance of following Yah's law. That's the essential character of the devil, the ability to re-engineer your perception, manipulate your mind to think that the tree which is going to kill you is actually good for food. And the thing that you should be terrified just looking at is pleasant to the eyes. And that the influence which would make you self-destructive and the greatest fool on earth is desire to make one wise. So we could just see that these attributes of deception are an essential part of the way that the Bible describes the force that we're up against. Fundamentally, when you get past all the symbolism and all of the metaphor and all of the creative, figurative language of the scriptures, we're basically just talking about the force of deception within the human mind. The force of deception, that's what convinces us that what's wrong is right and what's right is wrong. So when we consider carefully the attributes of the devil, we find that he was a liar and a master of crafts. He was very convincing in his outward appearance, and most of all, he had the ability to make evil or unrighteousness appear attractive. And this last characteristic, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is the most profound. He has taken his wicked inventions and most unholy way of life and made them sought after and desired by all nations. He has certainly deceived the whole world. And then Abba goes into a whole long list of examples of the type of deception that has been launched, to the point where now we boast about the mineralless, vitaminless, lifeless abundance of food. We've become addicted to evil and we love it because he's made evil appear very attractive. So evil is actually all around people nowadays, but they don't see it because their perception of evil has changed. Evil is everywhere, but nobody sees it because evil has been redefined as progressive, as enlightened, as modern. He has made his wicked, decadent, degenerate societies the attraction of the world, and everyone is trying to get there. So you cannot deny this biblical truth. Satan has made it pleasant to the eyes and desire to make you wise. Through his educational institutions, everybody has flocked to them thinking that it'll make them wise, not realizing that well-educated people have created the worst societies, deadliest weapons and chemicals ever known to man. The air is gone, the water is gone, the food is gone, love or care for neighbors is gone, and confidence in government is gone. All of these different things have happened, and it's been orchestrated by people with great education. So we can see now that that ability to make what's wrong appear right and what's right appear wrong is something that people have been educated into doing, into rationalizing and defending. So when we go back to our original question, what were / are some of his most outstanding attributes? The basic answer there would be deception. Deception, manipulation, the ability to play with our ego and to make us desire that which is actually self-destructive and harmful to us. Or as Dr. Amos Wilson once said, we develop a psychology where we love the things that destroy us and hate the things that give us life. That is a accurate description of the devil's most outstanding attributes. So when we hear that term devil, we should move beyond just the religious connotations and get into the actual function, the actual presence, the actual intellectual phenomena that we're describing here. And we're basically describing the source of deception. And it's been used to drive people away from principles of truth and righteousness and into cycles of self-destruction. That is our treatment of topic number 11. And then we will continue on. What are some of the reasons why many modern Black families are so messed up? And that's obviously a very deep question with a lot of different layers. So as we go into page 42 now, we see Abba Ben-Ami describing the impact of the westernization of the family structure upon Black people. And here he says, returning to the traditional pre-European educational roles of our grandfathers and grandmothers is not as outmoded an idea as we would imagine. To survive, we must mend the family structure. That's a serious statement. The mending of the family structure is a key part of our survival as a people. And note how he positions the pre-European educational roles of our grandfathers and grandmothers. That means that we don't just look back at the 1960s or the 50s and say that's the goal. Because by the time you get to the 1950s and 60s or 40s and 30s, you're still dealing with centuries of slavery and oppression and manipulation and poverty and exploitation, which has affected the family structure. But certainly from the 60s till now, things have increasingly become worse, you know? But when he says pre-European educational roles, this means we should actually consider ancient wisdom, which governed the family before we were brought into this ungodly land. And this would open us up to now reanalyzing the wisdom of the scriptures, or even the wisdom of traditional societies, to see, are there any alternatives to the madness of today's contemporary world? So this is actually, interestingly enough, a topic that we're going to be exploring much more in depth in the month of January. I'll be doing a 3-part series explaining these principles from biblical times until today, where the first class will go into the Genesis idea of male-female relations, where we actually go into the Hebrew language and we look at key concepts in the text, like the idea of the woman coming from the rib, the whole idea of divine order in the scriptures, some of these concepts of the masculine and feminine balance that exists, and the inherent divinity of the male and female principles in the scriptures, and how things have become corrupted over the generations to where now there's wars against the genders, or war between the genders, or even war on the idea that gender exists. All of this contemporary chaos and confusion will be explored in this 3-part series in the month of January. The classes will be happening every Sunday, Yom Rishon. So we're going to explore the ancient spiritual teachings, how we fell away from it, and then the principles for healing the heart that can help us prayerfully move forward in a healthier manner. Because that's an important aspect of the whole overall redemptive struggle. You know, and this concept that our survival is connected to mending our family structure is a very spiritually significant concept, because currently constructed, most people, when they think of religion, they're only thinking of, again, trying to have a social club that they can belong to. They're not really thinking about the survival of the race. But if you go, for example, into Deuteronomy 28, you see that was the scope of the authors. They were looking at the destruction of the family, destruction of the nation, the agricultural system, the labor policies, the export of people from one part of the world to another. It was a much larger perspective than simply wanting the people to call themselves Hebrews, you know? And so as we realistically look at the challenges affecting our people today, we have to know that you can't just, you know, I'm a Hebrew, your way out of it, or I'm a Muslim, your way out of it, or I'm a Christian, your way out of it. You can't just, you know, hide behind the couch and say that you're washed in the blood of Jesus and therefore all of our problems are solved. To give that impression would be to minimize the reality of what the Holy Spirit is all about, you know, and what the quest for Yah is all about. And so when Abba talks about this mending of the family structure, he mentions that it involves much more than we can imagine when you consider the state of things today. The plight of the African-American family is second only to the plight of the Black race. Whether we acknowledge it or not, most of our families are in serious trouble. Mounting divorce, premarital sex, drugs, and unwed motherhood. These terms that he mentioned here just sound like ordinary occasions, just normal things. It's just the way it is, you know, but it's not normal. It's normal in Babylon, but that's not how it's supposed to be. You know, but Abba says no family has escaped. The only question is not whether or not your family has escaped these cycles of pain and confusion. It's just how deep is the pain for your specific family? How much is the suffering? The problem is already at the crisis stage. Something has to be rethought. The price we have paid far supersedes the returns we've received. So if we're going to succeed in this awesome task, we must have a clear understanding of the problem. And this is where Abba goes into his answer here. What are some of the reasons why many modern Black families are so messed up? The two missing elements are authority and order. The two missing elements in the family are authority and order. Everything has to have order. Waste is the rule where disorder reigns. When you have no order in your day, you waste your time. If there's no order in your meals, you waste your food. If there's no financial order, your money tends to get away from you. Everything is negatively affected by disorder. So in the family without order, the man has lost his woman, the woman has lost her man, and the children have lost their parents. The woman decided against being a helpmate to man. The man decided to stop providing for the family. The children decided to stop being little servants to their parents. And everybody's free to make these decisions because there's no pre-established order. And the most important point to understand about the divine order of the scriptures is that the order begins with Yah. It begins with the Most High. It doesn't begin with the man. This is a common misconception. It's not about the rulership. Divine order is not about just the rulership of man over the family. It's about the rulership of Yah over the family. So that means if the man's spiritual connection to the Most High and his humility before his superior power, you know, is the key to being able to even earn the trust, to be able to develop the character, to be able to acquire the skills and the tact and the sensitivity, to be guided in the path of actually leading a family. When you go back into biblical times, that was an important position. The role that Abraham played inside the family, the role that Jacob played inside the family. These people who are leading their families in former times were taking on the responsibility. Remember, dominion is responsibility, not a privilege, not just sitting around being served all day, but taking on the responsibility of providing for, protecting, ensuring the well-being of everyone under their care. And in the modern world, there's been an attack on that idea. As men have fallen away from Yah, they've opened themselves up to criticism regarding their misbehavior and sent the whole family into cycles of disarray, while the serpent laughs and profits from the whole thing. And one good book on that subject is actually called Why Gender Matters. what parents and teachers need to know about the emerging science of sex differences. It's a good book. Talks about how taking away the idea that there are traditional gender roles, like that men should function in a masculine way within society. When you take that idea away from the men, you don't make the men more soft and sensitive and caring. What happens is you remove the boundaries within a man's mind that cause for him to want to care, because now he doesn't have that sense of honor and duty and obligation. So this social experiment in America, where they've been manipulating the idea of gender, has led to a new generation of men and women who have no idea of what's right and what's wrong. And the children growing up in that society are being miseducated by a system that thinks it's a good idea, you know? And so the removal of the divine order and the concept of authority is a key part of the problem, which would, again, tie right into the question I was originally asked. What are some of the reasons why so many modern Black families are messed up? You know, that removal of divine authority and order is an essential part of it.